Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Business Building Workshop for Writers. I'm Sarah Greesonbach. This is put on by the B2B Writing Institute, and I'm super excited for us to get this going. And while we give everybody a minute for their technical errors, my question for you is, what would you say is the most important thing you need to have in order to run a business? You've got consistency. Dave, nice. Business mindset, focus. I'm smirking because nobody's getting the one that I'm going to say like the punchline. Jim says determination. Rob, a viable business idea. Right on. Tim says marketing innovation. Zubin says knowing how to charge businesses and believing in yourself. These are all perfect answers. These are all really important things to have. But Sarah shared one, the consistent pipeline of high-paying clients. And personally, I think the most important thing you need to have, the thing that makes what you're doing a business, is clients. And so a lot of us can get trapped in this sense of learning more about the space, refining our skills, building our portfolio, all really important things that you need to get in place to have a business. But at the end of the day, it's a business if it has a client. And as we get going, and this is absolutely a sales pitch for the B2B Business Building Seminar. So if you love this, if this really resonates, the content that we're talking about here today, I'm going to stay till the end, there'll be a $100 off coupon. So it's very exciting. But let's dig into the content. And so one of my greatest motivations in life, and the reason I'm doing the B2B Writing Institute, is helping individual people increase their earning power and economic potential. I think that's one of the most important things we can do outside of changing the system, treating ourselves with respect inside our own heads. Improving your earning power can change your life and your family's life, and it lets you have more of an impact over everything around you. And business is a great way to do that. It's like the number one or the number two wealth building method for most people when they're old and rich and they get interviewed. But too often, I just see it as this big, mysterious blank space. It feels really secretive. Like you're only allowed in there if you're a shark and you were born in a suit. And if you're a good person, you better stay really far away. So when normies step into this space, like you and I, we feel unwelcome. Maybe we're a little uncertain. We make bad offers, and we spend too much time working on something so that what we're actually making, even when we bill decently, is like $1 an hour, and it's just a mess, and it doesn't feel good. If this is your first time hanging out with me, I'm about as normie as you can get. I started my career with a really practical choice of an English and creative writing degree. You can imagine how that worked out. I was a classroom teacher in public schools for a couple of years, made it like 2.5 years in 9th grade. Before I burned out, I moved into writing and editing and then government contracting. Then I moved into marketing and I was laid off in about 6 months. Everything else that I've done in the past 10 years has been learned self-taught or through courses and leaders in this space. You can see here's a little picture of itty bitty baby Sarah as a teacher. I think that was my first year teaching. It's fantastic. And that was in 2013. So I've run a freelance writing business ever since. And I was able to replicate my in-house salary. So I hit milestones along the way that kept me coming back and kept me in this space. It's like 50K, then 89. Then I finally broke that mysterious 100K barrier everybody seems to focus on. And then 200K. And I did that 3 years. So I've really proven to myself that freelance writing can be a viable high-income career if you're applying these business principles and getting comfortable with this stuff. Along the way, I funded 2 maternity leaves. That's proof of my life of chaos. I've dealt with chronic illness. I've freelanced through recessions, just everything life could throw at us, been through, and we've kept going. As it turns out, they can be quite a lot. These are my 2 sons. So I'm very happy to say, I really don't think business is just for sharks. I think there's space for all of us in this space. So in this workshop, I'm going to let you in on the incredibly valuable knowledge and perspective I've gathered over the past decade of running my freelance writing business. And along the way, I'm going to mention some of those books and people and free resources I learned from that might be helpful for you too. First, I want to talk a little bit about where you might be in this process, which is going to feel really good and give you clarity about what you might need to do next. Second, we're going to talk about minimum viable business theory, the kind of stuff you need to give your writing business legs. And any business, I think this applies to any business, but we're going to focus on a B2B writing business because that's what I have the most experience with. And then finally, a couple starting points and things to think about to avoid as much pain as possible as you go through this process, and a nice little Q&A session. So first up, how we got here. I find there tends to be 3 reasons people start a freelance writing business. Awareness of these reasons can give you some insight into what the experience is going to be like for you, give or take all those magical things that happen that's going to make your experience very different. For example, for some people like me, this was my situation. You're laid off from a job and it's just go time. It is time to fly. Survival instincts are kicking in. And I think this can be a pro in many situations because you've got a fire under you and you don't have the luxury of not adapting or not changing. For example, in my situation, I really did not enjoy being on the phone with anyone, but I also really didn't understand the sales process. I was not very good at that when I got started. But because I was laid off, because I was in go mode and it was time to fly, I had to do that. I had to get comfortable with things that were uncomfortable to me. And I'm really glad that that happened. The con with that, and this is just a con that I experienced, is you might get stuck in that scarcity and survival mode for a long time. And that can make your work life more uncomfortable. That can make your personal life more uncomfortable. You get stuck on that gear and it'll need some intentional help to get out of it. Next up, you might just want more freedom from your work. Maybe you're in a job right now and you'd rather be working from home. Maybe the goal is to actually just make more money, maybe to have more flexibility. The pro with that's the purest and most thrilling motivation to run a business that exists. So a lot of what you want is possible. There's going to be a lot of highs along the way. And working from home is going to feel great. Making your own money is going to feel great. But the con that comes with that mechanism that lets you break free and gives you that passion to keep going, sometimes that can turn into a chain for you that can chain you down, which we in the biz call the golden hamster wheel, right? Things start going well and you don't know how to unhook your rattlesnake jaws from the work life and you burn out. Ask me how I know. Next up, maybe you're earning a lot of money. You're working on the side. You've started your free business already and you're wondering when you can quit. Like you're in this really nice middle ground or maybe really painful middle ground where you're doing so much and you're not sure which way to go or which way it's going to fall. And the pro here is that you are super smart. That's a really good idea. You're making really great choices. You have two birds, you have two hands. As long as you can handle it, that's going to go well for you. But after a while, you need to eat and then you have birds in your hands and you can't do the things that you need to do. The con there that I see with people is that you're waiting for a feeling of comfort and assurance that frankly is just never going to, it's never going to seem like a good idea to let go of these two good situations. So you need to set your goals and then leap. And that whole process can be really challenging for some people. When it comes to taking action, I'm going to get on my soapbox about the Enneagram. It's a system of personality typing that describes patterns in how people interpret the world and manage their emotions and do things. This may or may not be helpful depending on how far down the rabbit hole you are with the Enneagram, but it's really helpful for me to realize there are types of people who find it easier to take action. And there are types of people who find it more difficult to take action. There are types of people who are more distracted by thoughts and feelings, and they let those things slow them down. And then there's types of people who are less distracted and don't have a problem with that at all. So if you're puzzling through these situations, tools like the Enneagram can help you understand how this is going to play out for you in business. And my example here might be, I'm an Enneagram 8. You discern which number is most accurate to your behavior and how you think about the world. And so as an 8, I'm really doing dominant. I really like to take action. If I feel stressed, if something bad happens, if I want something, I'm going to. But I tend to not think and feel as much. And so those issues really caught up with me 8-10 years into my career, and I had to sort those out. Whereas for other people, if you're feeling dominant, if you're thinking dominant, you're not going to be very quick to take action on what you're doing. And you're going to wait until you feel like it's a good idea. You're going to wait until you've done enough research and you know exactly what's going to happen. And those things are going to freeze you for a little bit longer. It might prevent you from getting where you want to go as much. In this section, this is where I want to talk about making a business easy, because this is what it all boils down to. I think truly any business that you look at, the businesses that we use as consumers, B2C businesses all around us, businesses that are very deeply B2B, it all comes down to how they acquire customers, how they sell to those customers, and how they fulfill on the work. And I really love this simple practice because everything that's wrong with your business can be fixed by zeroing in on the ASF. Everything that is going well with your business, it can help you identify places where you need to focus in a little more. So really, this ends up being your new to-do list. This is the thing to check in on anytime you're feeling stressed or unsure, or you just want to optimize things. We don't freak out and pull up YouTube, we just grab a handy sticky note of multiple sizes and we write these three things across the top: acquisition, sales, and fulfillment. Acquisition is where can you find clients, more specifically the clients that are best for you. There are some nuances with that. Sales, how do you talk to them in a way that encourages them to hire you? And then how are they going to pay you? What's that arrangement like? And then fulfillment, how do you get that work done really well, but in a really timely way as well? You can see how applying this to you and your personality and how you work is going to have a lot of nuances. Something to think about before we dig really deeply in is, do you like juggling? Do you like spinning plates? Do you like having a lot of different things going on at the same time? Because I think one of the biggest errors we can make in our first 6 to 12 months as we freelance is over focusing on one of these three balls when we need to keep all of them in the air. And ultimately, that's the pro or con of freelancing: is do you enjoy the interplay between all of these things? And can you balance them successfully? If you love finding clients and landing sales calls, but you just hate the work, if you hate the work, you're not going to have a fun business. It's not going to take you to a place you want to go. And the opposite is true too. If you absolutely love to write, but you just will never get on board with finding your own clients or talking to them or billing people, it's going to be uncomfortable, like extremely uncomfortable. And I think anybody can get better at all of these things, but if you fundamentally don't enjoy the process of getting better or you aren't willing to get better, then that's going to spell trouble. That's going to spell trouble. It's also how people end up becoming freelance writers, but then they find agencies or middlemen to do the acquisition and sales for them. And then they find they're not making enough work doing they're not making enough money doing this kind of work. It can lead to problems down the road if you don't decide to get good at these things. So let's pull up acquisition. A is for acquisition. And it really comes down to, where can you find clients? If you want a resource on this, Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port is a wonderful book that walks you through just the simple mechanics of finding clients and creating offers that are going to resonate with them. The illustrated version is really fun and lets you write in it with different markers and stuff. Recommend that one. One of the reasons I stuck with B2B and have stayed with B2B is because it plugs you into this existing system of clients. Unlike other kinds of writers like copywriting, maybe even journalism, it involves really large one-time projects and you have to find clients constantly. B2B content marketing tends to be recurring. So your job is to develop clips, be really reliable to those clients, and then raise your prices every 6 to 9 months. And that ends up being a business for you. Over time, half or more of your work is going to come from referrals or continuing clients. And so the pressure to acquire gets lower and lower as you go. Ideally, that's what we're working towards. So some sources of clients. We're not going to get too deep into tactics, but these will be some ideas that you can pursue. Ongoing networking on LinkedIn with other writers, as well as potential clients and marketing managers. Warm email prospecting, where you identify those companies using industry publications or trade magazines, and then send emails to them inquiring about working together. Referrals from existing clients, subject matter experts that you interview as you're creating content for other people. New work from the same agency, and clients leaving their jobs and then bringing you with them. So it's almost like you keep that existing client, the person who had that role moves to another company, and you move with them. One of the things I think could be a really important mindset to keep in mind when it comes to acquisition is abundance versus scarcity. This is going to come up at least to the first year, into the second and third year, is this sense of there aren't enough clients, there isn't enough money, I can't get what I need. That can become a self-fulfilling prophecy because you start to not see the opportunities that are out there. So something to focus on, something to be thinking about is just how much work there really is in the world, how many companies are starting, how many new products existing companies are releasing so that they need new content for those products. It's really can be a beautiful thing. A time requirement I associate with acquisition is going to be marketing activities that need to take place every week, even when you're booked solid. So scheduling yourself for Monday, I spend an hour on LinkedIn and I reach out to 10 people and then I'm done. Scheduling 20 minutes every single day or every other day, doing those sorts of things. That's going to help you stay on track with acquisition without making it a massive part of your life. S takes us to sales. So how do you talk to clients in a way that encourages them to hire you, And how will they pay you? How do you set your LinkedIn up in a way that makes it clear the kind of work that you do and who you work with? Some really great resources for this. Any audiobook by Zig Ziglar is really fun to listen to, and it's just really great storytelling and insights about sales. Also, the book Profit First, when it comes to managing your own money as a freelancer, I found that to be really helpful. It's by Michael Michalowicz. With sales, a big part of it actually starts with finding clients, because getting on a sales call and talking with someone about working together starts with whether or not they're the kind of person that you're going to help really well. So we need to get really clear on who you help and why, so that you can speak confidently during that sales call. The best salesperson, in my opinion, is going to be a really helpful person who genuinely wants the other person to succeed. But that can only happen when you know what you're best at. If you just want any kind of work, that's something that a client's going to pick up on really quickly. It's going to be really clear in the things that you say, and the things you want to do. You're not going to be able to convey the sense that you're actually there to help them and to direct them on the right path for them. The best way to become the first choice right away, I've found over the past few years at least, is to actually try to refer them to someone else, to try to pass them off to someone with a little less experience or someone who might be more accommodating to what they want to do, because it really shows that you're putting their needs above your own desire to work. Finding the right clients for you also comes in and has a role to play with pricing. So pricing is going to be a lifelong journey. I think you should be raising prices every 6 to 12 months. Many of us start out hourly and then move into project pricing and value pricing. But the most important thing is to start where you're comfortable and then make yourself uncomfortable to make sure that you're growing. At the very end of the day, we're finding people who have money to pay you, and we're figuring out what they need so that we can help them get that. And this always makes me think of Carol Tice and Linda Formicelli's post from decades ago. It's just as easy to fall in love with a rich mag than a poor mag, which is a play on rich man, poor man. But B2B invites us and asks us to work for companies that actually have money to spend on marketing. And that feels so obvious now that I say it. But when we are out in the world and trying to price blog articles and charge a certain amount for different kinds of content, sometimes it's really easy to forget that the content might not be worth that much to the company that's creating it. So our job, first and foremost, is to actually find content that is worth spending $500, $600, $1,000 for a blog post. The example that I'll give sometimes is, so let's say we're selling something very inexpensive to a very small audience. The amount of potential income that a company has to make based on that sale, like even if it goes really well, is not going to cover the cost of a really expensive blog post. But if you start to look at more expensive products and services, things that might be $1 million or $2 million engagements for a year for a consulting company, then it starts to make a lot more sense that maybe that blog post is worth $1,000 if it gets the point across perfectly, and if it helps capture our brand, it really moves a relationship along with a client. And same for a white paper. We start getting into $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for a white paper if the potential outcome is high enough or valuable enough for that to happen. In sales and with pricing, I'm also thinking about getting paid. Something to be aware of. Unfortunately, net 30, which is payment due 30 days after invoice, can be quite common in B2B content marketing because of how accounting team works. So on a freelancer note, cash flow is king for you, and saving up 3 to 5 paychecks in an account just for your own paychecks can really save you from bad client choices in the long run. One of those adjustments we have to make is that we're no longer getting a regular paycheck. So you have to give yourself that regular paycheck. And that's a concept from Profit First that's been very helpful. Giving yourself that regular paycheck alleviates so much stress. It also gives you more flexibility in who you're working with and when you're going to work with them. And it's just a really good move to make. When it comes to taking vacation or having time off, the only way to do that is to not get paid the time that you are away from your desk in a traditional freelance writing business. So that is one of the deeper motivations when we go to make freelance writing work as a career. Charging enough so that you can compensate yourself with benefits off and sick days is a part of it. So it's not that we are charging a lot for a blog post because we're just trying to take the money and run. We're charging a lot for a blog post because the work is worth that much, and because in the aggregate, that's going to give you the business structure and the flexibility to have a normal career, a normal workday. The important mindset I'm going to take away from sales and pricing is really getting to a place where you're helping and not selling. If you step into these calls thinking, I need to say the right thing and look the right way to make them do what I want, think that's a losing attitude walking into the situation. Ideally, you're going to educate yourself about marketing and get experience doing this work so that you really feel that you are helping someone and helping them figure out what they need for their business, not necessarily selling or trying to push them into one decision or another. A time requirement, something to think about with sales and pricing, is just doing it enough that you get comfortable with it. I think practice prospecting calls, practice interviews, all of these things can really help us realize that it's not that we're fundamentally bad at sales, it's that we've just never experienced that before, and it takes a little while to get comfortable with it. And next up, F is for fulfillment. So, how do we get the work that we've sold done really well, but in a really timely way? And at the heart of this is the question, how do we take on enough work to build wealth and have this great income, but not so much that we're burning out and overburdening ourselves? And it might seem like this is about doing a lot of writing, but what I've come to see whenever we're looking at writing from a performance standpoint is it's a lot more about maintaining your energy and your interest and your focus. So that's going to come down to capacity planning and scheduling, to some extent, even pricing to give yourself time to work on these things. And it starts with understanding how fast you are. So if one of your strengths that you bring to the table is speed, project and value pricing is going to be a great option for you. If you're not so fast, that's okay, but that might make hourly pricing a better fit for you. There's different ways that you can set this up to be better for you. You can also zero in on learning to write faster, which I'm going to attribute to niching down so that you don't have to do quite as much research every time you start a project, and using an outline so that you can plan your ideas a lot better and work on sections at a time. Some other things that really help us with fulfillment, power Pomodoros. So you can take this beautiful little kitchen clock and set it up for 50 minutes and then 20 minutes break and then 50 minutes focus work. And that's really going to help you divide your day and make sure that you're getting chunks of work done. It's almost like we're putting the structure around the work that we need. Flow music like Brain FM and Flow State are paid ones, but there's also free channels on YouTube that'll let you do that, like lo-fi beats and things like that. And then also time for research and just setting up an editorial schedule in a way that lets your ideas grow, flourish, and get better. When it comes to fulfillment, getting comfortable on the phone is a big part of it as well. Learning how to suggest ideas and not feel dumb, even when you say something dumb, which I do quite a lot. Asking bold questions, asking people who are above you on the hierarchy and asking them questions that might seem obvious to them, getting used to interviewing experts. These are all skills that we have to grow into. It's not something that we just step up to it and we're really good at it or we're really bad at it. With fulfillment, I've come to see, at least for me, the most important mindset is protecting the goose. When you break out, if you're planning on a high income freelance writing business where you're not outsourcing, you're not really growing or scaling, you're just becoming a very highly compensated professional, you need to behave like a high performance athlete. Rest, relaxation, fun, time off, health stuff, all of that goes to protect the goose that is making those golden eggs. And if you don't protect that goose, if you just run it on the hamster wheel for 5 years, that would be what I did. It can go very poorly for you. So it's good to keep that in mind as you're going into it. I'm going to do really excellent high performance work for 2 or 3 Pomodoros a day. And the rest of the time, I'm going to treat myself well. And the rest of the time, I'm going to take care of myself so I can keep that performance going. When it comes to the time requirement, something that could be a surprise, something that we could be getting used to still, when you write for a living, you're actually not writing the majority of the time. Maybe this creeps up to 50 and 60% if you have a lot of retainers. You could see that. But in general, I'm seeing half or 45% of your time to be actual dedicated Pomodoros writing time. About 20% we're going to spend finding and securing work. So doing marketing activities, networking, introducing yourself to people. About 20% of the time we're going to be doing administrative stuff like client and project management, organizing emails, setting up editorial calendars, keeping up on our capacity planner, that kind of stuff. And then ideally 10 to 15% of the time we're going to spend on professional development. That's hanging out with me, attending free webinars, and learning about what other people are doing in the freelance space. So just some quick tips, some things that came up from observing hundreds of writers going through this process and then remembering it through the fog of memory a decade ago. A stronger, happier first 6 months is going to come if you don't forget to prospect. Freelancing is going to have highs and lows. Even the most seasoned people will at some point feel like, oh no, no one's coming to me for work. This is all over. The ship is crashing. This is done. I need to fill out my resume and start looking for things. But that feeling always passes. And it passes a lot faster after you've gone through a lot of those highs and lows. And if you're keeping a steady flow of prospecting so that you have inquiries coming in and you're feeling that abundance of people responding to you and reaching out and interacting with you even when you don't need the work. I think that's a really helpful thing to do. The next thing you're going to do is take on too much work. Again, I do that myself. And just having awareness of the fact that desire for more, that sense of scarcity that makes you say, I have to take everything that comes across my desk. Because if I don't, I'm either a bad person and I'm withholding my help from someone who needs it, or I'm being greedy because who knows when the next assignment will come to me. You can see scarcity start to work its way into what you're doing. And so tamping down that desire for more, seeing your capacity planner and knowing that you have work booked out and how you're going to spend your time and when you can take vacation, all can really help with that. Next step is letting one client become most of your income. And I should probably have mentioned these are on the list because I did all of these things. So this is not me telling you how to live your life. This is me reporting on my regrets. Aim for about 1/5 of your income from 5 different clients. If you can get up to 6 to 10, maybe that's great. I could see that being quite a difficult workload to manage as an independent contractor. But aim for at least 3 to 5 different clients making up your income because things happen. Even if you are absolutely perfect at what you do and you deliver like 100,000% ROI, sometimes people leave their job and the project is now dead and it's doing anything. Sometimes people have a nephew come of age to be a writer, and so they need to hire that person instead of you. Things just happen that are out of our control, and protecting yourself to make sure that even if one of my clients or even 2 of my clients has an emergency and needs to stop working with me, I'm going to be okay and I'm not going to be thrust into that scarcity mindset or emergency state is going to be really helpful. I have broken this advice before as well. So a couple of my high earning years, I kept going so that one client was more than half my income. And it worked out just fine, but there was an element of stress and there was certainly an element of risk that I took on by doing that. So just having awareness of it is really helpful. Other people may not have a problem with this, but personally, I had to schedule a life. So when I sign up for watercolor class, that's 2 hours on a Monday, or when I go to improv for 2 hours on a Wednesday night, that is forcing me to get out of my life and stop doing that. If you get the freelancing bug, there's just a high risk that you're going to turn into a freelancing bug and your friends will never see you again and your family will always know you're under deadline. And we need to do things that get us out of those habits before it's too late, before you have antenna. And then finally, something I've struggled with the entire time is assuming that you get to keep all of the money that comes in. Now, the good news is when you are self-employed and you don't have any employees, your overhead does tend to be very low, but that does not account for taxes and business licenses for your state and fees associated with whatever business structure that you have. Insurance and your own benefits, if you are on a partner's plan, professional development and technology, vacation, sick days, family emergencies. I don't say this to scare you, but I do say this to motivate us to charge more for the work we're doing because it's not enough to scooch by on the $50 blog post when you have to turn around and pay taxes and fund your own insurance and hopefully take a day off around a holiday. Those are all motivations that put pressure on us to earn more. But the good news is it's possible to earn more and we get to earn more. I love it. And so I'm going to keep an eye on these Q&As that are popping up and I love them. I have 3 or 4 that came in. I want to make sure I addressed because people took time to message them. Very excited. So Tiffany asked, how do you handle client onboarding? I think the simple steps for handling client onboarding is one might be to recognize as a freelancer, we're not going to be onboarding clients constantly the way we might think we are. It's not that we are having 5 new, 10 new people coming every month. So we need this system to push them through so that we don't lose our mind. I think onboarding actually comes down to making sure that the client feels the attention that you're going to give them as you work together. So, are you responding to emails in a timely way? Maybe not within an hour because we want to set good expectations, but within 24 hours, within 48 hours? Are we giving them all the information that they need to work with us? And then are we asking for all the information that we need in order to get started with the work? Do we generally have a handle on what we're trying to do with that client? And then finally, perhaps most importantly, are we adjusting what happens in that onboarding process to what they actually want? Because there are some clients who just want it to be over and they don't want to have to have long calls, read long documents, get a sense of who you are as a person and what the first book you ever read was. Some people don't want that experience. They just want really good work done really quickly and they want you focused. Other people really enjoy that kind of relationship and really want to see an 8-page outline of the piece before you send it to them. So, if anything, client onboarding is going to be really unique to each client, and it's not going to happen quite as often as we think it is. Next up, what do we do for insurance and benefits in the US? Mainly, we cry, we weep most of the time. Personally, I have to pay about $1,500 a month for a family of 4 because I have complex health things that prevent me from using the cool alternatives that are out there. But I think I want to say, yes, it's expensive, but it's quite easy to get. And I have been on my own insurance for 3 years now as the breadwinner for the family. And I've really had no issues with it aside from the cost. So something to think about. If you're traditionally employed, you are already paying for insurance and benefits in some way. It might not be quite as much, but I think the benefit of owning my own schedule and making perhaps 4 times as much as anybody is listing writer jobs for has been worth paying for my own insurance and benefits. That's my sense around that. Laura T asked, what are some key red flags that a job could be a bad situation? And I could probably go on and on, but if I had to pick 3, I'm going to say, if I had to restrict it to 3, it's gonna be something about dismissing the work and how long it will take, how difficult it is, or the qualifications you need to have for it. I think if a client is trying to rush you about, "This is just a little thing, just hop on the phone, just do it real quick," any of those things, if we think about it, why would they have a project that is very easy and simple and quick to do? And why would they need a stranger to do it so badly? Those are red flags. If anything, I wanna work with people who have very important, very complex, very problems that will take a long time to solve because they aren't sure what to do and they really need your help. Those are the people who are going to value me and want me to help in a way that's substantial. Another red flag might be from LinkedIn today, where we talked about quality versus quantity and output. Anyone who's questioning quality or trying to lower the bar on quality is not going to care about what you're creating for them. It's not going to be not just personal, but it's not going to be significant to them in their business if they're pushing back on quality. And then finally, another red flag, perhaps if the only question they have is about price, I think it's fair to say that's going to be a red flag. Not because it's bad to talk about money or for them to have questions about price, but because that's just not the first thing that you would worry about when you're finding someone who's the right writer for your business. I think it would be more about what do you do and who do you do that for? Can I see some examples of that? And then once I'm sure it's a good fit, then I'm going to start to wonder about the price. And then Mr. P asked, how do you manage your workload? And I'm going to refer this, just the capacity planner is the most important thing I found for that. Personally, I really like a mix of digital tools like Google Docs, where I store all of the information stuff related to assignments, and then paper tools. So I have a map up on my wall that says kickoff call, outline, SME, and draft. Then I move sticky notes around wherever the project is. And that's going to help me manage a lot more work at one time instead of only working on one thing a week and then moving to the next thing. That lets me keep a lot of different balls in the air at the same time. And I have a free download about capacity planners that I'll include there. So Jim asks, what would you consider fast and slow rates of writing a thought leadership article for a beginner? An article that would require at least one SME interview and some additional research via internet. Fast is going to be like an hour. Absolutely created projects start to finish in an hour. And it does not happen as often as I'd like, but it does happen, which is one of those reasons value pricing can be so great, because we end up benefiting from our speed and our experience in the industry. When it comes to slow, maybe middle ground, someone very smart said about an hour per 300 words is what they had looked for the output of finished copy. We could expect about an hour per 300 words. I think I agree with that. I think that's a good way to go. So that would assume like about 1,000 words might take you 6 to 8 hours. I think that'd be normal. Slow. Here's the thing, Jim. We all have pretty similar typing speeds. We're not talking about our typing speeds because as nerds, we have figured out a way to type at probably like 60 to 80 words per minute. So really what's happening is it's a slow and fast thinker and a slow and fast finisher. And I think those are really different things. Because when we first come into this, we might be thinking, what I'm writing needs to be perfect. And so I'm going very slow and building this perfect thing one layer at a time. And that approach to it, that slow thinking and slow finishing, that's what really slows us down, even if we're typing just as fast as anybody else. That's my typing jazz hand. So really, to me, it's more about how do I speed up how fast I'm thinking? How do I speed up how fast I'm assembling and moving through the process of draft, edit, draft? And how am I moving through the process of perfection, like my own sense of it's okay to write something dumb and then fix it later. For some of us, that takes a really long time, and we'll sit with the dumb thing for a week before we're willing to just move on and make it better. And that process, I think, is something that we can get a lot faster at. Oh, I love Dave is sharing. Always keep in mind your client may have never worked with a freelancer before. So you get to set a lot of those expectations. That's a wonderful point because it's also that difference between being the writer monkey who comes in and taps versus the writing partner who comes in and asks difficult questions and then creates. I think there's a spectrum that aligns with how much we charge there as well. And Linda says, what's the reasonable response time to an email or call when you're booked and you have a client when other expects immediate response from their email? I'd say immediate responses 75% of the time will be a red flag. I have to say, I do have a client who really prefers immediate responses and will call when that doesn't happen, but I just don't answer, is how I have dealt with that situation. So it's not always that a client is a red flag if they need an immediate response, but we do some strength and some control over how we respond to that. So I'd say within a business day is a really good idea. Within 2 business days is fair. It's also COVID times, so I've responded 2 or 3 weeks later and just said, "Thank you for your patience." So, whatever you're gonna do is gonna be fine, but if you find that you get a lot of inquiries coming in and you never write back, I'm thinking that means there's something else going on. It's not about your response time. And Dave also says if they wanna argue over rates, I'd run and then run some more. I think that's fair. Not just because they're cheap. They may be cheap. That's a different situation. But once you set the rate, if you back down off of that rate, that's going to introduce some weird power stuff where now you are playing to their tune. Like you are setting the tone for how things go. And that is great for a long term relationship. Some ways that we can work around that whenever somebody pushes back on a rate, like maybe talk about changing something about the offer, have it take more time. So you have more time and you're not as crunched with that. You can add things to the project. You can remove things to the project. But once we say a rate, it's really important. We're probably going to want to stick with that rate. Yeah. And Laura says, I like the map idea as a visual. Totally. Yeah. And there's different ways. Let's take a look at that capacity. Your health and well-being. So I have a link to Ed Gandia's version here, which will take you to a lead pages to sign up with. He's got the original. I was trying to think of something funny to say and nothing came. So he just has an original one that's really good. I've updated it with colors and emoji that I find very relaxing to look at and fun to play with. And so what'll happen here, our capacity planner is talking about how we spend our time. And then the actual projects that we're balancing is going to come in more in a graph like this. And so these are different tools I'll use if I have too many projects piling up. Let's say I made no mistakes and I made a perfect schedule for myself, but somehow the clients got delayed or the client sped up. And so now 15 things are due at the same time. That's the kind of thing that might pop up and happen. So in this case, we'd be able to have each project would get its own little rundown of this is the person, this is my project manager, this is where we are with the project, and this is when it's due. This is my activity or my next action point. And then this would allow me in a quick glance just to see where all my projects are. And so that's going to soothe that deep burning pit of confusion and fear inside of me to say, look, I have a lot going on, but I'm on top of it all. And I will chunk away at this with different Pomodoros in my capacity planner. So this is like a digital version of what I have on my wall. I do tend to like it on my wall better just because too much of life is digital at this point. Let me share a link to this, and I'll have that in the replay as well as a link. But we've got it in pastel, we've got a Christmas version, and then we've got the soothing, studious version with axes. I'm gonna keep doing some different versions because it's really fun to make this. And you'll find this lets you set up, maybe you find that Mondays and Fridays are not so good for you for deadlines, which is what I've found over the years. And so I took off the Monday one and the Friday one so that I can try to train myself to only put the deadlines on Tuesday through Thursday. So that's not so full up on Monday and not so full up on Friday. I don't always stick to this, but it does make me feel better when I do. And that's why it's called your health and well-being, because it's all getting the work done is almost secondary. It's how you feel and your performance level as you're getting this work done that's going to let you sustain this and take care of the goose in the long run. Well, coming up, Jill has a question. Oh, Jill, that's so interesting. So, how does one present oneself as qualified with a very skin and bones portfolio? Let's make sure it's not actually pictures of skin and bones because that might worry people if we're setting that. But I'm going to assume we're not saying literally that. But let's say you just have one or two great clips. And I think the first thing to think about, I can't believe I didn't already have this in here. My original claim to fame, the freelance writer's pricing rubric. First, I do think we want to set some reasonable expectations about our rate. To walk in with absolutely no experience and expect to make $300 an hour, probably not realistic. I'm not here to hold you back. If you want to try to do that and figure it out and be worth it, go for it. But I think if we're trying to be really thoughtful, I'm going to share that as well. If we're trying to be really thoughtful and perhaps realistic about what we're charging, when we come in as a beginner, we're going to have beginner rates in the $20 to $50 an hour range. The thing is, successful freelance writing is not necessarily the only experience that qualifies you to charge more. And that's why I really like this rubric because it's going to break it down into is our writing skill. Some of us are exceptionally skilled, even if we don't have the specific kind of writing experience. And you need credit for that in your billing. Some of us have processes and project management experience in place. Some of us have marketing experience or niche experience. Let's say you have a banking background. Some of us have, like, what we're saying essentially is that we don't outcome and guarantee and lack of risk that we're offering our clients because we don't have a positive track record yet. And that's a bummer. That might not be great right off the bat, but you still get to get credit for being really good at writing, for being really reliable and seamless and having tons of experience helping people in other professional capacities and perhaps being vaguely aware of core concepts in marketing or these other things. So if we're saying we are trying to, let's scroll to the question again. If we're trying to present ourselves as qualified, the trick is you already are qualified. So really we're just trying to present ourselves as someone who can help. Maybe that's splitting hairs. That's probably splitting hairs. It's more like maybe we are yet qualified to help people with a particular kind of writing, but there is always someone out there who just needs a really smart writer who can learn the concepts and make it happen. So that's going to change who you're looking for and who you're trying to work with. To walk up to someone very established in a space and say, I'm going to create just excellent, mind-blowing content in your niche for you, that is not terribly believable. And so that's not going to get us on prospecting calls and stuff. But if we're looking at companies that might be starting their content marketing initiatives, maybe they're trying thought leadership for the first time, and you are just a dang good writer, even though you've never done this before, we can come in and I think very fairly charge $50, $75 an hour because the work that we're doing, we're helping them brainstorm and apply these things and get this work done. So to me, what qualifies you is your willingness and ability to write and help with these things and learn about these things, not necessarily that you have demonstrated perfect proof of everything. Because just in that worldview, if only the people who are perfect at this get to charge for it and do it, that's 5 people. I don't think I'd even be on that list of people allowed to do this. We're allowed to do this if we're beginners, and then we work ourselves up that list. Feel very strongly that. Susan asks, can we recommend a client management system? And quite frankly, I think that can be really distracting because we're never going to have more than 10 clients at a time, like 15 clients at a time. So we might want more like digital marketing client prospecting system. I could see that happening. Personally, I have always made use of just simple email and simple LinkedIn. So I wish I could offer more insight into that, but I have not needed to do that. I think the people who get really gung ho about that stuff just enjoy gadgets and really enjoy the technical side of things and playing with that. And in that case, maybe just play around with a bunch of them would be great. And John asks, what is value pricing? I love that. I'm a good value because I'm fast. Or is it more than that? It is a little more than that. So value pricing is probably the third kind of pricing if we're going to summarize and really simplify things. We have hourly pricing, project pricing, and then value pricing. Project and value can get squidged sometime. We're going to say squidged because that's just when things get gross and stuck together. Hourly speaks for itself. You have a per hour rate. Sometimes that's within the range for a client. Sometimes it's not. Up here, I'm not recommending hourly billing. It's just that's how I'm talking about value. Very few people are going to walk into a situation and say my hourly rate is $500. That just doesn't really happen. But what they might mean is my equivalent hourly rate or my internal hourly rate gets up there, and mine does. I tend to get more like $2 to $250. And so what's happening there is instead of saying I'm going to write you a blog post, it's $300 an hour and it'll take me 6 hours. That's $1,800 for a blog post. In a project pricing situation, we're going to say my rate for a blog post is $1,500. And then it's up to me how long that takes. That's just the project rate. So they don't have to worry about how long it's going to take you. You have to worry a little bit about how long it's going to take you, but you have a lot more control over that. And then you benefit as you get faster, as you get better. In value-based pricing, this I'm seeing less in the writing space. I think of this more as a business, maybe the technical side of things like engineers, conversion copywriters. I could see that as well. But that would be the case where a landing page has the potential to make a company $500 million. And so you have priced helping out with that landing page at $60,000. I don't know. I don't tend to go with value pricing quite so much, but that's an end of the pool that some people hang out with. I think Jonathan Stark is a really good resource for that kind of stuff. But I'm not seeing so much that we're going to look at a white paper and say that this could potentially make you $1 million, and so I'm going to charge $100,000. Don't let me hold you back, but that's not something I'm going to see quite as much. Yeah, and the book by Jonathan is Hourly Billing is Nuts, and he's got a great free email list as well. Cool, and that was John. Perfect, and let's scroll down. Dave recommends Basecamp for project management, keeps everything in one place. I see people enjoying Asana and Wrike.com, Trello, OneNote, Evernote, various types of software. And Sarah asks, how many clients would you work with on any given week? I would say about half my work ends up in the publication and agency space. So it's kind of like it's one client, but there are 4 to 5 client projects. If that makes sense. So agency has assigned me to multiple projects with different clients. And I would say in general, the easiest way to answer that question is I have about 10 spots in my FreshBooks account for clients, 10 different companies or entities that I bill, and a mix of them that I work with each month or each week. In a given week, let's say a very busy day, a very busy week is going to have maybe 3 to 4 client projects that need a significant amount of work done on them. And then over the course of the month, maybe I have 10 to 15 that I'm balancing. And the way I'm balancing it is because we go back to this planner right here. It's like some projects are at the kickoff phase and I don't have to think about it or worry about it or do a thing for the next month because I know April 1st, we're going to meet and kick off about it. It's just on my radar and I'm thinking about it. Other projects, if I have 5 in the outline phase and 3 in the first draft phase, I'm probably going to stay up a little later that day and I'm going to be a little stressed. And so I want to avoid that. And that's how I'm using this planner is to say, If I have 10 projects at the kickoff phase, maybe I should hold back and not take off more because this is about to crash down on me and be a problem. But you start to develop your own temperature of what's risky, what's too much, what's not enough, and what can I do to fix that and orient it. And Dave shares, yeah, so if we have a skin and bones portfolio, a great way to add to that is to create your own portfolio pieces. That's called writing on spec and writing a clip. It can be challenging. It's perfectly doable. I have a program that helps you do that. Many people are able to do that as well. And Jill asks, do you think blog writing would be a better place to start versus starting with white papers, case studies, or longer articles? And I do, but perhaps not for the reason you think. I think all three of those things are great writing experiences and perfectly doable, even without a client. But when you're first starting, the first time you write these things, it can be agonizing and it can unearth everything bad you've ever thought about yourself. So to make the first one really short and make it easy win, if not easy, at least quicker win, I think a blog post, it's possible to create an experimental one in a couple hours of focused writing. Whereas with a case study, you need so much more information. And with a white paper, you're going to be digging through so much more information that it really balloons the amount of it expands the likelihood that you will not make it to the end because it's just so arduous. It's saying for my very first hike, should I try for Everest or should I go through the backyard? And it's let's go through the backyard. Just for the first one, we'll do it really quick and we'll learn the right bug spray for us that doesn't give us an allergic reaction. And then eventually we'll try to go longer. Yeah, and John shares many clients won't accept writing on spec. It has to have been published. That's fair. There are definitely going to be clients who have feelings, capital F, feelings about that sort of thing. My thought is ideally we are putting ourselves in the path of many different kinds of people. And some of them will see a diamond in the rough and say, I see those writing skills. I really need a writer right now. I'm going to try this with you. That sounds great. I think at very beginner levels, I think that's a legitimate thing that's going to happen. Other clients who might have a ton of experience hiring freelancers, they know exactly what they're looking for, and they're going to carefully evaluate your portfolio and not meet with very many people at all. So we want to account for the fact that clients are going to have different preferences too. I love it. Yes. I just want to make sure I'm ending on time and not keeping anybody over. I also heard a door slam downstairs. So at any moment, a 5-year-old could run in here with a chicken, stuffed chicken. So it's important to keep that on the mind. I think a really helpful phrase that might be written on your wall at some point is another definition of fear, which is false evidence appearing real. And this is not something I made up. This is just some wisdom from around the world. Our brain is afraid of failure and insecurity and ruin, and it's going to see that everywhere to protect us. That really can activate when we go into business for ourselves because business is so personal. It's part of our identity. It's part of our ego. It's part of what we eat and where we live and who we hang out with. It's very big for our brains. So it's helpful in some situations to protect ourselves, but it's not always true. It's not always telling you what's really happening. So acknowledge your fear, listen to it, then say thank you, do it anyway. Put it in a little box, sit next to it on your desk. That's something that I still do regularly, even 10 years into this. I am regularly afraid and I regularly journal about it and put it to the side. Know that the flow of work is happening behind the scenes. Once you start doing this, once you connect with a couple people on LinkedIn, it's these tiny steps, but it unlocks this serendipity and it really is seeds that are growing. It's something random that's going to come through and be an opportunity for you. It can pop up at any time. So weeks or months after you planted it. I have so many stories of people who are sending client inquiries and then 6 months later, a year later, somebody digs up that email and says, hey, are you still writing? Can we work on this? Approaching this as the long game, approaching this as a real career and something you're investing time in and that will pay off again and again. This is not a fast way to make money. I would not recommend doing this unless you really want to write. And you're going to be surprised by serendipity as long as you keep watering that soil. So that's writing clips, charging clients, networking with your interests, and just connecting on a human level. Good things really do come from that. So that brings us to our conclusion. And thank you so much for joining me. I know it's really difficult to show up and participate in something and give me your attention for a full hour in the middle of the work week. So I just really appreciate that. If it is an important time for you to get the business building basics in place, I want you to think about signing up for the B2B Business Building Seminar. This is an on-demand program that breaks down the process of running a profitable freelance writing business into 8 weeks of theory and practical tactics. You're going to get step-by-step instructions for finding writing clients, selling your work, and delivering your work with confidence and ease. It's going to put timeless business principles to work for you, and you're going to hear everything that I have to say about your short to-do list as an entrepreneur, business mindset and niching mindset, your website and your LinkedIn strategy, sales mindset, sales calls, invoicing and proposals, your editorial calendar, capacity planner, and everything you need to know to have a much better life as a freelance business owner. I think this could be a great fit for anybody who's starting a freelance business for the first time, or who's running a freelance writing business and hasn't quite gotten the traction to make it really profitable. I'll leave you to read more about the bonuses and the things that come with it on the landing page, but if you want to run a profitable writing business, I think this is really important to check out. So thanks for watching, and bye.